Welcome to the premiere edition of LexLocal. Firstly, LexMedia is a resource for any Lexington resident interested in media to learn production and share their vision with the public. What you may not know is at LexMedia, we also have full-time dedicated staff members who love to tell stories of their own. Terry Samarias, Julie Manugian, Brian Doda, and myself, Rick Dorrington, have been telling the story of Lexington for the last 8 years under the guidance of Executive Director Florence Del Santo. And now, we're pushing our ethos even further into a bi-weekly program where we can keep all these stories in one place. So, welcome to our first edition. You can expect anything from town updates, human interest pieces, and maybe even some hard-hitting journalism. In today's show, we'll be looking at new climate change legislation and how it may affect Lexington, the controversial removal of 37 pine trees near the center recreation area, a participatory budget where you'll get a say on how $500,000 of town money should be spent, a CBD store in the center called Sapterra, and finally, it's hot. So we followed around Moe of Moes Ice Cream. Plus, we have a sweet treat surprise for you at the end. With record high temperatures and hardly any rain, Lexington is now in a state of extreme drought. We have dry grass everywhere, and the town has asked residents to restrict any outdoor water use between 5:30 a.m. and 8:30 a.m., all the way through October 14th. Surrounding towns have gone even further, with some issuing total outside water bans. According to the National Center's Environmental Information, 33% of the country is also experiencing severe extreme drought conditions. President Biden just signed into law the Inflation Reduction Act, which contains the strictest measure ever passed to combat climate change. In Massachusetts, Governor Baker signed the act driving climate policy forward. We spoke with Chairman of the Sustainable Lexington Committee and Select Board member Mark Sandine to find out what it all means.
Well, thank you, Mark, for joining us on LexLocal today. So could you kind of break down for us everything you can about these bills and how it would impact us here in Lexington?
Yes. Well, Julie, thank you for inviting me, and I'm happy to talk about these issues anytime. There's a tremendous amount of interesting things in the Inflation Reduction Act, which is the federal bill. The solar investment tax credit has been increased from 26% to 30%, and now that tax credit moves out through 2032. So there's some certainty about this solar tax credit. It also now applies to energy storage batteries, and it also applies to ground source heat pumps. So the other interesting thing for the town of Lexington is that the federal legislation now allows nonprofits, schools, and municipalities to take a cash payment in lieu of the 30% tax credit. So that can have important implications for the design of our fire station, our police station, and our high school project coming up. There's also a really interesting thing in the Inflation Reduction Act that now allows a 20% additional investment tax credit for solar energy systems that are located on low-income residential building projects. So that could mean that folks like LexHab could get 50% off the cost of a solar energy system installed on qualifying low-income residential building projects.
And I think it's coming at an important time. We've certainly been experiencing a big drought, not only here in Lexington, but nationally. I've been filming around town and have found dry patches of grass among all of our beautiful Lexington landmarks. It's been a dry summer for us.
And it's been a hot summer. If you sort of look at where we are, we've had more heat waves this summer than we've ever had in Lexington. There were 6 days over 90 degrees at the beginning of July, followed by 8 days where the average temperature was 87 degrees. And then we had 8 days where the temperature was over 90 again. This is unheard of in New England. What we're starting to see is that the amount of air conditioning we need to use to stay cool every year is going up every year. But interestingly enough, the amount of energy we need to use to heat our homes is going down each year.
And Mark, how about the Massachusetts climate bill?
Yes, an act driving climate forward that Senator Barrett led the charge on provides tremendous amount of benefits for the entire Commonwealth. There's also a lot of talk about the 10 communities, and that will allow 10 communities, Lexington among them, to start to electrify new construction. So in Lexington, we tear down and build new about 75 to 85 homes a year. It's not a lot in the overall scheme of things, but it is a start for us to start figuring out a way to start moving to all electric in the future. One of the comments I hear many, many times is, if we're going to have to electrify all of our buildings, why don't we start with the new construction? Because if we are in a hole, if we're in a drought hole, if we're in a heat wave hole, maybe what the first thing we ought to do is stop digging the hole bigger. So that's basically the idea of the electrification. We're going to have to electrify these homes eventually. Why not do it at the start when it's cheapest?
Sounds like there's a lot to unpack here, and I hope we can keep talking to you in the future, and you can join us in future episodes of LexLocal and help us to understand this more.
I would love to do that.
For many years, 37 white pine trees have lived behind the Center Recreation Complex. And now, it's time for some of them to come down. The town's Public Works Director, David Pinsino, tells us why.
Some of Lexington's longest residents had to say goodbye this week. There were no U-Hauls, no goodbye parties, and no one was happy to see them go. Instead, this is a story of 37 damaged white pine trees, a neighborhood coming together, and after many months of discussion, a compromise between residents and the town. I spoke with Dave Pinsino, the town's Public Works Director, about the unfortunate situation.
My name is David Pinsino. I'm the Public Works Director for the town of Lexington. So I've been with the town for almost 22 years. In the first 11 years, I was the Public Grounds Superintendent Tree Warden for the town, and the last 6 as Director. So there was some concern about the white pines with all of the different projects that are going on in that center recreation area. So in working with some of the neighbors, we were asked to go ahead and have those trees assessed. When we did that, what we found is that there are a number of defects in those white pines, which would classify them as hazard trees. So a hazard tree is a tree that has a defect and it has what we call a target. The target either being people, property, things like that, that cause loss of property or loss or serious damage to life. At first glance, all of the trees, because they are pines, were classified as hazard trees. We had an independent arborist come out and take a look. The neighbors were concerned that, maybe they weren't all hazards, and so they got an arborist, a tree person, to come out and take a look at the trees as well. We looked at the 2 reports. We got together, the arborist and the neighbor's tree person, and met on site, myself and Jerry Harris, who was representing the neighborhood, and really did an in-depth look at each tree to see what the condition was, why we thought that it was a hazard and that it needed to be removed. We went through that process, 37 trees originally in there. There's 12 that are going to remain on site. We do have some concerns with that because pines, right now, collectively, they're protected from wind and things like that. So we're going to have to monitor the remaining trees, but there are 12 trees that we thought had enough vitality and a better structure on the stem that we could leave those for the time being. So this is why we had to deal with these pine trees, but really looking in depth, again, we were able to come up with a compromise that left the healthier trees on site. And we tell people, if these trees were in the middle of a forested area with no trails, nobody around, it wouldn't be an issue. Because of where they're located with homes right adjacent to them and an active recreation complex, the risk factor is just too great to leave them in that condition. So that's what we're looking to do. We've worked with the neighbors. We think we've come up with a fairly good compromise that alleviates the imminent hazards that we feel that are out there, and gives some stability. There'll be some trees that remain in the replanting plan for that area. Our practice is we promote trees and tree health and getting them into the community, replanting and encouraging the trees that are there, by pruning and things like that to do well. We also have a responsibility that if there's a hazard tree, that we have to deal with that. And it's an unfortunate part of the, of the business, but We can't, if there's a known hazard that's out there, we cannot leave that and take a chance that something catastrophic is going to occur.
Welcome back. The town's first ever participatory budgeting cycle has kicked off. That's PB for short. And the town is looking for your participation on how to invest $500,000. Our producer Brian Doda sat with Public Information Officer Sean Dugan, who explains how you can participate in the process.
The town of Lexington has $500,000 allocated for the town's first ever participatory budgeting cycle. The funds are a part of the American Rescue Plan Act. Participatory budgeting, PB for short, is a democratic process that allows the community to vote on exactly how they would like to see that money get spent.
According to the Participatory Budgeting Project, the first participatory budgeting process dates back to 1989, and since then over 3,000 cities have done it across the world, first being in Brazil, and then locally here in Massachusetts we have Cambridge is the gold standard for participatory budgeting. They've done it for 9 cycles now at this point, but also you're now seeing Somerville and Cambridge, and then in New Hampshire, Nashua, New Hampshire is doing it as well. And in Cambridge, you've seen the implementation of new public restrooms, additional trees to the city canopy, also electric vehicle charging stations, bicycle repair stations, water fountains, things that just overall contribute to the quality of life in the community.
There are limits on how this money can be spent. Eligible projects must benefit the public, be a one-time capital expense, with no operation costs to the town, and the project must be on town property. Ideas are submitted through the town website or by calling the town manager's office. You can also email your ideas to the address on screen now. The deadline for submitting your ideas is September 16th. These ideas are then vetted for feasibility and cost, and in November, the final project ideas will be put up for a vote.
We want to make sure that the public knows that no idea is a bad idea. We want to make sure that everyone feels welcome as long as they fit the criteria. We're interested in hearing what types of projects you think could be used to invest in the community.
The winning projects could be implemented as soon as December. There's another PB cycle scheduled for next year with additional money from the American Rescue Plan. If this process is successful, the town might consider future PB cycles with funds from the annual town budget. Dugan says this is a great opportunity to have your voice be heard.
And it's important because it gives residents the ability to be able to directly impact and propose ideas and then be able to vote on how they want to see investments made in the community. They can do that already as part of the annual operating and capital budget process by talking to their town meeting representatives or to their select board members, but this is a more direct form of participation, and it gives us the ability to be able to hear directly from residents who might not otherwise be on a board or a committee or involved in town government.
For LexLocal, I'm Brian Doda.
Hey,
Hey,
is everything all right?
yeah, of course.
You were never a good liar.
I mean, he's finally locked up. We saved the day. I'm fine.
Sure. Just tell me what's going on.
I don't know.
You don't know what?
I don't know what to do next. Everything's different now.
Yeah, that doesn't mean you have to be.
But I am. So are you. I just wish. Have you been filming vertically the entire time? Dude, this is a movie, okay? This is cinema. It's not your sister's piano recital.
Oh.
Turn the thing sideways.
Oh.
What are you doing?
Sorry.
CBD. No, I'm not just stringing 3 random letters together. It's the abbreviation for cannabidiol, an active ingredient in cannabis derived from the hemp plant. It's said to help with everything from anxiety to pain and inflammation. The major selling point is that it doesn't cause a high and it isn't addictive. Rosemary Austin had such a transformative experience with CBD that she decided to open up a shop of her own right here in Lexington.
My name is Rosemary Austin, and I am the owner and founder of sapterra Mercantile. Sapterra is Greek for dragonfly, and I chose dragonfly because I wanted something that symbolized what my journey had been, and dragonfly symbolized overcoming adversity and moving towards happiness and growth, and that's why I wanted to name the business that. I had been in a serious motor vehicle accident driving into work, and I ended up having 3 cracked vertebrae in my neck and needed to have spine surgery. I was on opioids, which I didn't want to be on, and then after that, just a lot of pain medication, which I also didn't want to be on, and a friend of mine recommended CBD. So I started with the topicals, and then I again wanted to continue with it, so I also added the ingestibles, the tinctures and the gummies in along the way too. So I was dealing also not only with the physical pain, but there's a lot of anxiety and depression and just, unhappiness based on the accident and then the surgery. CBD is an amazing natural compound. It comes from the cannabis plant. It helped a lot with inflammation and pain and discomfort, which was really helpful. And then also too, anxiety, calmness, restful sleep cycles. It helps in easing joint and muscle pain. It works holistically with your endocannabinoid system, so it helps just keep your body in balance. It was transformational for me, and I had such a great experience with it that I decided that this would be the right thing to do, to be able to have a business, enjoy what I was really doing, and help people at the same time. I wanted it to be a community space. We teamed up with Body and Brain. They've been holding holistic classes here. So last week was Korean yoga, we're doing Tai Chi, and there's going to be Qigong. And then we also support small artisans. What we do is we invite artists to come in and display their work. It doesn't have to be any specific medium, it can be anything. And we have them set up in the shop, and we also put them on our website and post on social media for them to try and get them extra exposure. When I was going through my recovery period after my surgery, there's a number of people and groups that helped me along the way too, and I just wanted to be able to provide some type of environment for people to be comfortable and be able to relax in and enjoy spending time in.
Well, we already talked about the hot temperatures, so how do people cool down on a hot day in Lexington? You listen for that happy music and run towards Moes ice cream truck.
When the sun is baking and the summer gets hot, Moes Ice Cream Truck is a very cool spot. Mohammed Shahaiber has been Lexington's premier ice cream truck provider for over the last 20 years, and he has no plans of slowing down anytime soon.
My name is Mohammed Shahaiber. I'm the only driving an ice cream truck in Lexington. Occupation, I'm a self-employed. I gave up my college degree for this. I'm a computer scientist. I start working in this town at 97. Been basically driving my ice cream truck through the summer. That's just about what I do for a living.
This is Moes Ice Cream Truck coming here. We wanted to thank him and everybody here for this amazing blast.
This town is really wrapped themselves around me. And everywhere I'm driving, there is some shout, hello Mo, hello Mo, hello Mo. And that makes me feel thrilled with these people. And I start serving the first generation, is their own kids in this town at this point. When I was serving you ice cream,
I was like, what?
like this.
Tiny. Oh, this small? Yeah.
Yeah, just like
I was
that.
this big. Now look at me.
Now look at you now. Oh my
As an ice cream consumer, the ice cream truck song will always be considered a banger on every level. But I had to ask the opinion of the man who has to hear it every single day.
I like it. You get sometimes sick of it, after a while, but you playing it, the kids enjoying it, they dancing to it. So it's like more joy for the kids more than adults.
Whether you're a child or an adult, Mo has made an impact on this community with his friendly smile and contagious laugh. And there is one thing that we can all agree on in Lexington.
And now, a surprise from the archives. A video about a former scooper who landed in the U.S. Senate.
My father drove a truck for the Hood Milk Company, so he got me a job driving an ice cream truck all across Malden and Lexington and outside Fenway Park. I love being an ice cream man. Just every single ice cream imaginable. That is how I work my way through BC. I had one incident, however, where I was out in Lexington and I was selling ice cream for about a month. And after a while, kids get used to coming down at the same time. It's almost like a bell goes off, like in a Pavlovian. They know Eddie the ice cream man is going to arrive at 6, 6:10, 6:20 on their street. So they already are negotiating with their mothers for the money they're going to need. I made the mistake one day of going down by the Lexington Green because there were so many people down there. And the police came over and told me that it was illegal. And all I had was one more kid with his money and looking up at me, and looking for the fudgicle. And I said, what would you like? And the police officer just took the window on my ice cream truck and slammed it shut and said, follow me. And he took me over to the Lexington police station, and he pulled out a town ordinance that was about 150 years old, and it prohibited the sale of victuals by means of ringing a bell within the boundaries of the town of Lexington. It's awful hard to sell ice cream without ringing a bell. And he told me never to come back again. But I came back the next night. But I didn't violate any law. I just rode up and down the streets at 6, 6:10, 6:20, and the kids were there because the bell was going off in their head and I didn't have to ring it. But I told them all it was my last night in Lexington selling ice cream. The next week, at the Lexington Board of Selectmen, I had 25 mothers and kids in the back of the chamber wanting to know why their children could not buy ice cream from Eddie the ice cream man. And the Board of Selectmen that night in Lexington voted 5-0 to repeal the town ordinance prohibiting the sale of victuals by means of ringing a bell. I started to say to myself, maybe I have a career beyond selling ice cream someday in politics. So I look back at that as my great first political victory and achieved at the birthplace of freedom, Lexington Green in Massachusetts.
For all of us at LexLocal, I'm Rick Dorrington. Thanks for watching.